Chapter 12. Sue was licking my wounds. This particular act of mercy had me sprawled on a quilted pillow on the edge of a quilted sofa in the nest of a small alcove at the back of Kitten Caboodle. The open door to the boarding-house was facing us, on the left, behind the jagged frame of the counter. The window was open, too. A couple of fingers of moonlight had poked their way through the blinds and started groping around in the atmosphere, feeling their way to the microwave and casting a dusty light that made the linoleum look romantic. Sue, who considers herself a semi-professional nurse, was all semi-professionally businesslike, and meanwhile this moon sparkle dancing around her hair. "I'm almost finished," she said. "Ouch." "Poor baby," she said consolingly, "and you think that you're so tough." "I think I'm a jerk," I said. "Well, if you're expecting a heated argument—" She paused and examined her work. "It wasn't your fault, you know. You were jumped. Of course, the jerky part, the idiot part, was trying to jump in the van. He could have killed you, Sam." "Naw, he'd have never found me, Sue. I'm gray. I would have blended into the carpet. And besides, he'd have been preoccupied. The major thing he'd be focused on would be hurrying home to the hideout." "To the hideout?" She frowned. "You mean the place where he's hiding Sandy?" "It would have to be at his house." "I guess you're right." She settled next to me and rested her reddish chin against the curve of my battered paw. It was one of those serene and nearly perfect little moments. Then she added, "Or Mary Beth's." "She isn't involved," I said. "What?" "She isn't involved," I said. "Listen, Sue. I looked into the lady's eyes, and they were violet, I imagine, with extremely long lashes. You guys," she said. "Really, Sam, you think if a lady's beautiful, it also means that she is good." "And you girls," I said sarcastically, "you think if a lady's beautiful, it also means that she's bad." "I do not," she said. "Whatever." "Mostly not," she said. "Fine." "And besides, you can tail him tomorrow." "Tail Casey?" I said. "Of course. And since it's Saturday night, Sam, it's better. He'll be doing a matinee, so he'll be coming back in the evening, so at least he can drive you back. When's the performance?" 7 o'clock. "Very good," she said delightedly. "It means you'll be home for supper. Would you like me to get some pizza?" She was right, of course. He could drive to Jersey at 4 o'clock and turn around and be back at 7. He could do it because it was Saturday. There wasn't an evening rush, and he could certainly— "Oh my gosh!" Sue looked up at me. "What's the matter?" "Nothing's the matter," I said. "He's here. Sandy's here. He's not in New Jersey." "Not in New Jersey," she said. "Of course." "Because it's Friday," I said. "Of course." "You're being sarcastic," I said. "Well, you're either wonderful or you're nuts. I haven't decided." "Go with the first." She looked doubtful. "Give me a reason." I decided to give it a shot. Today was Friday. That was the key. And on Friday, major traffic started jamming at 4 o'clock and didn't quit until close to 7. Bumper to bumper. Jersey to here. And now, consider it, Susie. Sandy wasn't kidnapped till 5 o'clock. She thought it over a while. "Okay," she said, "he'd still have a couple of hours. 5 to 7 is 2 hours. To get to New Jersey, stash Sandy, take his photograph, get in the car, get to Manhattan, get to the theater, get in his costume, get on the stage." "He couldn't have done it," she said. "Ta-da!" "Want some pizza?" she said. "Now?" "I saved some pieces from Harry's supper." She arose, very slowly, stretched her body, and hit the ground and started nosing around in the garbage pail. "Of course," she said reluctantly. removing a soggy crust. "I hate to mention this, but Sandy really could be at Mary Beth's." I said, "He isn't at Mary Beth's." "Violet eyes," she said. "You've always been a sucker for violet eyes." "Just forget it," I said. "You're wrong. The only villain is Casey Jones." "You mean John Casey Jones?" screeched a grating voice from the boarding-house. I pivoted. "Antoinette?" "The one and only," it hollered. "Yes, and I demand to know what you're talking about." "Demand?" Sue looked up at me. Her wish is her demand. "Just relax," I said. "Just relax." I looked at her soothingly and hollered to Antoinette. "So what's the story? You ever heard of the guy?" "Heard of the guy? Of course I've ever heard of the guy," she said. "He's Mrs. Angelhoff's brother." I heard myself at the door. The boarding-house, which Harry calls the Chateau des Chats, is very nearly what you would expect. It's a tidy but anonymous-looking middle-class boarding-house, a few steps from shabbiness, a few miles from charm. In the 1,000 others like it in the heart of 1,000 cities sit the same tired boarders with the same tired tales, of families that didn't love them, of children who didn't call. The rooms, there were 9 of them, 3 stories high, and going 3 chambers across, had a bed, a small dining room, a scratching pad, and a John. And Antoinette's had a James. He was sprawled out, snoring at the edge of her metal door. "What a dump," she said for a greeting. "What a flea-bag. What a slum. Why, if it hadn't been for James, I might have—" "Left?" Sue said hopefully. "Puked," said Antoinette. "Girls, girls," I said. James woke abruptly and said, "Where?" Antoinette shot him a look that could have frozen a hot potato. "Only kidding," he said discreetly. "I'm 100% yours." "I certainly hope so." Antoinette twitched her whiskers and tossed her head. "It's been such an impossible night. First Spike came and told me the terrible news of Sandy, and then you came," she beamed at him, "like a sun over a mountain top, to brighten my empty life." "Speaking of puking," Sue injected, "if anyone feels the need—" She pointed quickly at some newspapers. "Listen," I said abruptly. "Let's stick to the main subject, which is—" "Me." Antoinette turned provocatively to James. "I heard someone mention pizza, and my hunger is at a peak. Darling James, could you be a dear?" "Absolutely." He turned to Sue. "It's in the garbage pail," she said, "under the coffee grounds and the Kleenex." "Coming up," he said, and trotted off like a spaniel to fetch a stick. Antoinette delivered a sigh. "I shall miss him with all my heart, but I can worry about it tomorrow." "Are you leaving?" I said. "Tomorrow. Mrs. Angelhoff telephoned to say she's picking me up, though of course she talked to Harry." "Did she mention anything else? About a ransom note, for example?" "Oh, the ransom note. Yes. We heard them talking over the speakerphone." "And?" I was looking at Sue. "She was blubbering," Sue explained. "She was telling him how she's broke, and she doesn't know what to do." "Well, she wouldn't," I said. $40,000 to get him back? And she has to talk to the guy tomorrow? That's a strain, Susie. So, I looked intently at Antoinette. "So what do you know about Casey Jones?" "The whole story," she said. "Go."